Like, what makes people tick? What makes a relationship work? Why is it that some couples seem to have it all together? What is it about them? What are they doing? What is their secret sauce? The other day, I was having a conversation with my husband. So I said to him, well, what do you think makes us work? Why do you think we get to enjoy being together, being married, being in this relationship? And I'll be honest, I honestly did think that the first thing the man was going to say was sex. And he surprised me because right off the bat, his four ingredients for a successful relationship were trust, commitment, respect, and attraction. And what I loved about the four that he chose is that they're so similar to my top five ingredients for having a thriving relationship. And that's what we're going to talk about today, too. And so, yes, the sex does factor in, is part of the attraction, it's the emotional and the physical attraction. But there are other things that obviously help feed into that and help build that. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, too. Now, I would say that my top five ingredients for a healthy, thriving, exciting relationship would be trust, respect, attraction, shared values and goals, and effective communication. I think if you have all five of those things working hand in hand, then yes, your relationship is going to be in a really good space. I found it interesting that one of the both of us, the first thing that both of us jumped to when we talked about key ingredient for a thriving relationship was trust. So both of us believe in trusting your partner. Do you trust your partner? Does your partner trust you? This is an area where some couples really do struggle a lot, especially if there have been cases like infidelity. And actually, you can bounce back from infidelity. You can then go into having a super thriving, happy, compatible relationship even after. I will make a note in the comments. You probably want to check out content created by Esther Perel, who does speak about this quite a lot. Okay. But let's say you're not quite at that stage yet, or even if you are, you can take what I'm about to say and just consider it, reflect on it, and see how it can apply in your situation. We have to start with ourselves, as we always do. How can I be a trustworthy partner? Well, there are a couple of things that you can do to be a trustworthy partner. One is to take ownership of your mistakes, be accountable about it, deal with it, accept it, find a way to overcome it. Being honest, even when you know you will look bad. I struggled with that. So a lot of you know that my husband and I have been together since this year will be 24 years. And I'll be very honest, I was always very perfectionistic. I had to look good. I had to be right. I had to say the right things. And if I did anything that I was ashamed of, or I felt put me in a bad light, well, what would I do? I would lie to cover it up. And one of the things that I learned really early on with my husband was that lying is probably the top of his list of things he despises. So you can just imagine how this worked, especially in those first few years, where, I would want to cover up things that I had done, and he'd find out, and then we'd be having that very uncomfortable, very difficult discussion. Now, again, it took a while. Okay, I needed to be in a space where I could trust myself, respect myself, act in a way that I always felt, if not proud of, that I would be comfortable owning it. And so that the times when I don't act in a way that I'm proud of, I can own that too, separate that behavior from my identity, but be honest about my actions. That took a lot of work. And there are times where my default is still, I gotta look good. We live and we learn and we get older and we mature. And one of the things we have to learn is that there's something more important than looking good. And it's being a person of integrity. It's being a trustworthy person. Consistency is another way in which we can establish ourselves as being trustworthy. All right, we're not perfect. Are you almost always doing what you say you're going to do? Super important there as well. How can you cultivate a relationship where your partner is the kind of person who is trustworthy? How can you create a relationship where your partner feels safe to be honest? One of the ways that I know my husband did it for me is that when I did take ownership of my mistake, or when I did admit to telling a lie and go about trying to rectify the situation, he was very encouraging about it, very opening, very welcoming, very forgiving in most situations. So that being able to forgive is very important. And it's not just the kind of saying that you'll forgive just for the convenience of it, but genuinely meaning it, genuinely letting go of the resentment and hurt attached to a particular situation. And then not throwing past mistakes in your partner's face when difficulties arise later on. Because if you're constantly throwing their mistakes at them, then they're not going to feel comfortable owning up to them and taking responsibility. Not that that's your responsibility to make them accountable for their actions, but constantly telling someone, look at all of these times you've been wrong, look at all of these times you've been bad. You're not building them up. So you want to build them up to get them to a space where they feel safe, being honest, being vulnerable. More important even, being vulnerable, admitting that they were less than. You want to give them comfort in that space. Allow them to make their mistakes and correct them and work on becoming a better person. Now, a lot of this also, relates directly to the idea of respect. So that's one of our other ingredients. And I think for most couples, they will agree that respect is important. But very important here, what is your definition of respect? What is your partner's definition of respect? What does that look like? Because something that you may think is not disrespectful, they may feel it as disrespectful, and vice versa. Something they may do that they think, oh, it's nothing, but it might hurt you. So it's very important to have that discussion about what does respect mean. Now, I always tell people as well, respect doesn't mean that you have to agree on everything. We're two totally different people. We've been brought up different ways. We have different views on life, different perspectives, different experiences. We're not going to agree on everything. But have you ever been in a situation where you are, with another couple and one partner is constantly correcting the other, or like one might be telling a story and the other one's like, no, it didn't happen that way. No, you didn't do it like that. No, this is what happened. You got that all wrong. And just constantly being contradictory, or worse yet, and I have actually not so long ago been in this situation, spending time with friends and one partner belittling the other, talking about, oh, he's always this and he never does that, and such a typical man, but that's how he's always been. Now, she was trying to pass off a lot of this as a joke, but it really fell flat as a joke and instead just felt very awkward for all of us. Now, I would say both of those things show a sign of disrespect for your partner, especially around other people. Coming back to what I said, you don't always have to agree with your partner. But what I would say is that perhaps, especially when you are in situations where you're in front of other people, don't be intensely contradictory to your partner. Okay, that for many people looks like disrespect. Again, it's you and your circumstances could be different. But that's one area that I see coming up over and over again with people I speak to, and even in my day-to-day life and in my interactions with others. Parenting is a perfectly good example of this. I cannot tell you how many times my husband and I have disagreed on a particular consequence one of us may have been doling out to one of our children in the heat of the moment. Or we've disagreed on how we should treat a particular circumstance. I'll tell you one thing though. It's very important to us that even in that moment, we bite our tongue. If mommy has said something about your behavior, about what has happened here, my husband is not going to argue with me in front of the children. and vice versa. There are times where I think what he has decided to do, the course of action he has decided to take, what he has said is not the best way forward, but I will not contradict him in front of our children. Bet your bottom dollar we are discussing that as soon as we can between the two of us. And if we decide together to make an adjustment to a consequence, but it's again very important, especially in parenting, do not undermine each other, do not disrespect each other, especially in front of your children. There's nothing wrong with coming back and revisiting the topic with your child and restating your new perspective. That's perfectly fine. But the important thing is that you are working together. And we're going to revisit this idea of the importance of parenting and shared goals when we get to that section on shared goals and values and how we can have different opinions, but we're working towards the same end result. Okay. Now, I'll tell you another thing. When you or your partner feels disrespected, though, you should both feel comfortable enough to speak up, to have that discussion privately about what happened, how you felt, maybe even why you felt that way. And remember, how you feel is never wrong. It's your feelings. It can't be right. It can't be wrong. It's just how you feel. And if your partner is saying something like, well, you shouldn't feel that way, or that's not how I meant it, you can explain, I appreciate where you're coming from, but this is how I feel. This was how I felt about that situation. Okay. And if your partner is telling you how they feel about a situation, same thing applies. Listen with empathy. Okay. And discuss how you can both move forward to not put each other in those awkward situations where you feel disrespected and disconnected. All right, that brings us to number 3, attraction. Attraction, both physical and emotional. So it's so important to have that connection through attraction. And here's an interesting thing, right? Sometimes when I talk about attraction, I also liken it to liking your partner. I was just speaking to someone recently about this. We were talking about marriage and love, and marriage and love being like the guardrails within a relationship. And you love your partner, but sometimes you may not like them very much. That's okay. That's normal. They're not going to always do things that you like. They're going to do things that you don't like, that piss you off, that frustrate you. Okay. And you're going to do the same to them. That's fine. But you want to be in a situation where there's more liking going on than disliking. Okay, you want to have fun with your partner. You want to enjoy spending time with them. You want to look forward to spending time with them. You want that your face lights up or their face lights up when you see each other again after several hours apart. This is part of building up that whole idea of attraction, the idea of liking each other and having fun together and wanting to be together physically as well. And one of the reasons why I always harp on the need for this romantic connection, this attraction, it's because this is what makes your relationship so different from any of your other relationships. Yes, the idea of sex, but yes, it's the level of intimacy that you can have with your significant other that does not exist with any other type of relationship that you have in your life. Now, emotional attraction and physical attraction are very important for building up intimacy and vulnerability within a relationship. We talked earlier about trust and respect. Wow, those two things play a huge role in emotional intimacy. Getting to that state where you can feel vulnerable, where you feel connected, you need to have the trust, especially. So that's why trust and respect are very important, because they can feed directly into the sense of attraction and feed into the intimacy. And I think when we talk about emotional intimacy, for many of us, it's about that sense of feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling appreciated, feeling cherished. And both partners need this. Both partners need to feel understood. Both partners need to feel appreciated. So this is important on both sides. the physical connection, it's important. Prioritize sex in your relationship. Make time for it. It's not something just to, throw in at the end of the day if you're not too exhausted after all the other hundreds of things you've had to do in the one day. Okay. It leads to that deep sense of connection. It's a different level of closeness. Okay. It is something that allows the couple to feel more vulnerable together. It's something that allows the couple to be a unified whole. It's another way of expressing your commitment to each other. It is important. Okay, so how do we keep this, physical attraction alive? How do we keep this emotional attraction alive? Well, it comes back to that idea of having fun and enjoying each other's company. So continue to pursue your partner like when you were dating. Continue to act as if you don't know if there's going to be another date. And how do I get this person to want to go out with me again? Okay. Now, I know for some of you who are listening to this, like I do all of that. My partner doesn't. Or it takes two. Another favorite response is it takes two hands to clap. Yeah, sure, it takes two hands to clap, but one hand has to start. And this is what this conversation is all about. This is where the person who's listening in and feeling like these things aren't happening. And you're saying, but I do that. They don't care. They don't want to. They don't want to understand. Okay, that's a starting point. If you care, if you want to push it forward, if you want to improve, that's one great starting place. And reach out, let's discuss how to take it from just you wanting to, for it to become a reality. So keep up with your date nights, your surprise gestures, your, even just like things like holding hands, simple things that just show that you have that affection for each other, building up to then being able to have open conversations about your needs, about your desires, about, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. All of this is part of that attraction element in your relationship. But as we said, we need the trust, we need the respect, it helps feed into the attraction. Number 4, shared values and goals. Now, I've heard some people say that this one isn't so important because people can change, and what may have been a core value or a core goal at one point in their life is no longer a core value or a core goal. And I can understand that, and I'm going to touch on that soon too. But I would say if you're at the start of your relationship and you realize that your core goals and the values are not compatible, that if one person is pursuing theirs, the other person can't pursue their own, then that may not make sense. But if you are in a relationship where you did start off at a point where you did have shared goals and values, well, how is that being maintained? And the thing is, if we have a situation where we trust and respect and we're attracted to each other and we're spending quality time together, when we are changing together, and we can come from a place of curiosity, and we can talk to each other and we can see how we are changing. And it's not that one person is going to be totally blindsided by someone's change in values and goals. Here's another really important thing. You should have shared goals for your marriage, shared goals for your relationship that you want as a couple, and you should have shared goals and values and a vision for your family moving forward as well. And that's what you're going to keep moving forward on. And I mentioned earlier that sometimes we don't have to agree on the how. So parenting, again, this is another area. You both have that shared goal of having your children healthy, happy, successful, nurtured. But you may disagree on how to keep them healthy and happy and nurtured and successful. And this is where you get to remember that it's you and me, as in you and your partner, against circumstances. You're not fighting each other because you both have the same shared vision. You're just disagreeing on how to get there. But because you are both committed to your shared vision, you will find a way to work through your disagreement on the how. All of this, the trust, the respect, the attraction, even the shared goals and values, lead us to number 5, which is effective communication. Another cornerstone of a thriving relationship. Well, they just open up the path to honest and open communication. That's the type of communication you want to have, not forced sentences. When you trust each other, when you respect each other, when you're having fun together, when you have a shared identity, Your conversations, a shared goal, sorry, a shared vision. Your conversations open up and are much more authentic and are much easier and much more open. And here's the thing, when you are comfortable enough to express your concerns, your needs with your partner, when you are both listening to each other, when you're both empathizing with each other, what that simply does is refuel the trust, the respect, the attraction. So they all work hand in hand. It's not, communication is the most important one. I don't necessarily think any one has to be more important than the other. I think all of these things work together and continue to feed off one another in creating this super thriving relationship. Okay. So do you remember what were the 5 things that I said were important to a thriving relationship? I'll tell you one more time. Trust, respect, attraction, shared goals and values, and effective communication. What are your top ingredients for a thriving relationship? What works for you? What do you think works best? You can share them in the comments. And by the way, if you were listening at the start, do you remember what were the things that my husband said were his top 4 ingredients for a thriving relationship? All right. Well, that concludes for today, and I will see you back here next week, Tuesday at the same time.